How's it going, folks? Welcome back to the channel. Going to look at the Mazda RX-8 here on Forza Horizon 5. Now, this isn't just your old standard RX-8. This is the R3, the final RX-8 made by Mazda. This was released in 2011. This car is the last rotary-powered car made by Mazda. Now, for the Series 3, Mazda made some changes to the older models. This car's had a few design changes to give it a sportier look. Those larger 19-inch rims, spoiler on the back, new headlights, front and rear bumper has all been changed and modified. But it wasn't just the outside that Mazda's made changes, it was also underneath, which is a bit more important. So this R3 does have sports-tuned suspension, including Bilstein dampers and upgraded stabilizer bars, throw on some sticky tyres, and you got a nice, fun sports car. However, there's been no changes done to the engine, or at least that I could find. Still a lightweight, naturally aspirated 1.3-litre rotary, putting out 232 horsepower, which isn't really bad figures for a lightweight two-door rear-wheel drive sports car. However, due to it being a high-revving engine, like all rotaries are, you've got to rev it up to 9,000 RPM to change gear. It does have a low torque output, especially low down the rev range. So to get into that power band, you've really got to slam your right foot down. More on that later. Now, you got a 6-speed manual gearbox. It's so good to have. I miss cars with manual gearboxes. All the power goes to the rear wheels. Now, the RX-8's got pretty much a near perfect weight distribution, so it should be a really good handling car. More on that later. So if we jump into Forza Vista mode, we can look at the engine, which that doesn't open. We can't look at that, which sucks. We'll go around the back. This has got really unique doors in this car. 4 doors, can't open those. Boot, not allowed to go into that. This is clearly not a premium scan model for the game. Hopefully they upgrade it for Horizon 6 in a couple months' time, but we can go inside. You're limited to what you can do. You're looking around in the car. You can't quite pivot around and have a proper look. I've been spoilt by the VR in Gran Turismo 7, but it's still a cool looking car and it has aged really well. Overall, I've been a massive fan of the RX-8 since they came out in the early 2000s. This one, the R3, is my favorite. It's just like nothing else at the time, and that's what stood out for me. So much so I nearly bought one of these about a decade ago. Really liked them, loved the look of them. They're unique, unlike anything else on the road, but I held off because I heard so many bad horror stories about rotary engines when they get older. Now, speaking of rotary engines, let's take her outside and see what it sounds like. Alright, that's in game. Now let's compare it against the real car. Hopefully the in-game audio gets improved on Horizon 6. So let's test the car out on a custom-built motorsport park I built. We're going to test out the braking first from 150 kilometers an hour down to 0. Let's see what this can do. Hard on the brakes. Ignore the smoke. That's just a glitch with the replays. 53 meters from 150k. So we'll compare that later on with some other cars. But for now, got a purpose-built drag strip, 5 kilometers long, dead straight. Let's see what the RX-8 can do. 0 to 100 kilometers an hour, 5.9. 161 kilometers an hour is 15.9. Not a bad car to drive. Doesn't make it. It sounds okay, but it definitely struggles with the power. 1 mile drag down here takes 24.3 seconds. Top speed, you'll eventually get to 246 kilometers an hour, which it happens just as you hit the 5k barrier. The other thing I do is test acceleration from rolling start, so from 50 kilometers an hour up to 150, just to simulate coming out of the corner, so I know how to tune the gears. This does it in 10.9 seconds. However, I tested the 2022 Mazda MX-5. They're roughly the same PI scale. That does it in 10.6, and it's got 50 odd less horsepower. So this R3 does need a little bit of work done to the gearbox to try and coast a little bit more acceleration out of that back end. We're going to speed up time just a little bit, get down there at the end so you can see where we get there. And that is off the end. Hard on the brakes so we don't fall off the damn edge, because I didn't even bother to put a wall at the end of my runway. So we took exactly 5 kilometers for this thing to get to the end. So this is my 50 rolling start to 150. Just so you can see it. Don't really have to do this. I just like to visually see out on the road what the car can do. So 50 up to 150, and then I get an idea what it does, how it pulls between gears, and then when I put on a racing gearbox and start tuning, I like to then adjust it to try and get as much acceleration to simulate it coming out of the corner. But this is the all-important test that really matters, what this car can do around a track. So I built this purpose-built test track a little while ago. I showed it off in a previous video where I modified the track by putting in a slalom and fixing up a few corners here and there. This is a purpose-built track to test out in the cars. When Horizon 6 comes out, the plan is to recreate it exactly and continue this series where we test out all the cars in the game. First half of this track, as you'll see if you haven't seen the previous video, is pretty technical, some sharp corners, a little bit more braking zones than you'd usually expect in a Horizon circuit race, where there's usually only 2, maybe 3 hard braking spots. This one's got quite a few. The RX-8, like I said earlier, it's got all the ingredients there. The real-life cars had some suspension upgrades and tuning done to it. In-game, the front end of this car is so good and very responsive. It doesn't feel like it's got a really long wheelbase. The front end turns in so good, but the problem with that, the back end doesn't always follow. This car does want to slide. It's got, I guess from memory, 225s on the rear, so they're not overly wide tires. So you're constantly adjusting the throttle to stop this thing from trying to drift out and slide, which is not a problem. It's a lot of fun to slide the cars. It's Horizon, we all drift around. But when you're trying to set some consistent lap times, it gets quite frustrating. So definitely put some wider tires on it. And the other thing it could really need is a little bit twitchy. So I'm thinking some anti-roll bars. Install those as well. In fact, I'll test them out later on. It took me quite a few laps to get this slalom correct with this car because the whole thing just wanted to slide, but I got it there in the end. It is not too bad. I'm quite glad I put the slalom in there. It's a good way to test out how the cars shift their weight around, and you can figure out how to adjust the anti-roll bars and the suspension accordingly. Out of these last few corners the other day leading into this one, almost on the back straight, almost completed. It's roughly a little over 2 minutes for most cars. I quite like this track. It's good fun. And the fact that I built it, I'm quite proud of it. But that is the RX-8. Awesome little car, but it needs a little bit of work to be a little bit better. It is quite twitchy in the rear, but I still like it. So as you see, in the end it did 209.2. At the same time I ran the brand new 2022 Mazda MX-5 on screen, you see I did a 208.1. I know there's a few years in between, but the RX-8's got a lot more power. But because it's a high revving rotary engine with those little short technical corners I've got, you're coming out of those corners in second gear and you're so far down the rev gauge. It takes so long for the power build up. So I tested the car again with some upgrades onto it, and just putting on the anti-roll bars took off nearly 2 seconds without any other upgrades. So just doing that alone made the back end more stable, and it was a lot better to drive. But yeah, that is the RX-8. First video in a series. We're going to test out a little cars. We're going to continue this series going into Horizon 6. So we'll be making a lot of testing car videos leading up to the release of Horizon 6. Then we're going to rebuild all these tracks and continue the series. Hopefully we get a lot of cool cars to roam around Japan, and I can't wait for that game to come out. It's been 5 years since Horizon 5 dropped, and we desperately want a new game. So I'm Rob. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, and I'll be back in the next one in a couple of days where I'm going to be doing a double review with the new Toyota GT and the Subaru BRZ. We'll compare them both. See you later.